Okay, you're welcome to the class. We want to look at GST 105, History and Philosophy of Science, Module 1, Unit 3. If you have been following this channel, you will notice that we've done Unit 1 and Unit 2 videos, so you can check for those ones. Today, we'll be looking at the third unit of Module 1. Okay, and today, this unit is actually very, very interesting, very educative, didactic. Okay, we are looking at basic scientific theories. Okay, in the earlier video, we have shown you how theories evolve over various steps before we can say, okay, this is now a proven theory. Okay, after we have done a lot of research, experimentation, and the rest, we can say, yes, this is a theory. So a scientific theory basically is an explanation about the cause or causes of a broad range of related phenomena. So because of the stages we pass through, all right, in now being able to now convincingly say that this is why this is happening. This is the law behind this particular happening. Okay, in the earlier video, I gave example of Isaac Newton, right, letting us to know about the theory of gravitation. Okay, and from that hypothesis, a lot of experiments were done. Then we conclude that yes, this is actually a proven theory. The theory explains how things are related or their common properties. Scientific research leads to the accumulation of facts about nature. As the facts accumulate, organizing them into higher knowledge becomes imperative. So we keep on gathering knowledge. Today we'll be looking at Darwin, who is referred to as the father of evolutionary theory, and we'll take a glimpse into his life, into his work. I will see that when we say something in scientific theory, it's not something you just stumble on. It's a lot of work, all right, which might even take years or decades, sometimes even hundreds of years, to be able to say yes, this is it. And even then, we keep on accumulating knowledge about those theories. Okay, so to help in the organization, a working hypothesis is usually required. So every theory starts as hypothesis. We've said it before. So the hypothesis may be right or wrong. In the earlier video, I said that hypothesis is simply an educated guess. So for you to know that the hypothesis is correct, you have to go to the lab, you have to go to the field, all right? Perform experimentations, then you confirm the hypothesis to be correct. Then it becomes a theory. So theories are proven to be universally valid and have a high degree of probability and now called natural law. So you can move from theory to law when what you have proven is of universal application, universal acceptance, like the law of gravity. From here to Jamaica to America to wherever, the law of gravity remains the same. So it's no longer a theory, it has graduated into a law, natural law. So theories enable us to explain, predict, and control phenomena, right? We can explain the gravitational pull now because we understand it. We can predict if I throw a stone up, I know it's coming down. Then we can even control it. All right, from the laws of gravity, natural gravity, that is where we started controlling it, and that is where you get, all right, place. How can we suspend that law? So it's research in how we can control the law of gravity that created, the laws that keep helicopter in the air, the law that keeps aeroplanes in the air. All right, the laws that keep a rocket flying in space, and it's not coming down. So we are able to control even that phenomena, okay, through that theory. Okay, so we keep on. So there are so many of these scientific theories that have been proposed, proven. Theory of universal gravitation. Of course, you should know this for your exam. theory of evolution by natural selection, which we'll be looking at today. Atomic theory, all right, for example, which helped America in winning the war against Japan, World War II. I'm sure you will have heard of it. Nagasaki, Hiroshima bombs. Genetic theory, relativity theory, quantum theory, and so on. So you have all these theories there that have been proposed. You are supposed, for your exam, you're supposed to be able to know examples. So look at the exercise again. What is a scientific theory? You should be able to explain that now. Then number 2 question, theories enable us to dash, dash, and dash phenomena. So I've just explained that. I'm sure if you pause the video and go back, you will see what you're going to feel in that in those gaps. Okay. Number 3, examples of scientific theories include A, B, C, and D. I gave examples, and you should be able to know those examples for your TMA and for your examination purpose. You should be able to tell the examiner examples of the scientific theories. So we're looking at theories of evolution. So how do we get here? I'm sure all of us have asked that question. Where did we come from? Just find ourselves, all over the place. Africans, Americans, of course, name it, Europeans, name it. We're just here. How did we get here? All right. So the answers point in one direction, which is evolution. Evolution means progressive change of living things through time. Through time. So living things evolve over time, progressive change over time. All right. And I said, in evolution, Darwin is a central figure globally, even though there are other people that have contributed to the theory of evolution. As you will learn today, all right, even before Darwin, there were people that have done a lot of contributions to the theory of evolution. So question on this might be set on, your understanding of evolution before Darwin, all right, your understanding of evolution in the time of Darwin, and your understanding of evolution, all right, beyond Darwin, okay, evolution after Darwin. So you should be able to tell us, all right, as a student of this course, all right, the theories that existed before Darwin. You should be able to tell us the theories that or hypotheses that were propounded, the thoughts, all right, rather, okay, the thoughts that were evolutionary thoughts that were in place before, during, and after Charles Darwin. So that is very, very important for us. So, like I said, evolutionary thoughts, I don't want to say theory now, all right, have been in place before Charles Darwin was born. For example, in ancient times, people believe in the theory of spontaneity, all right? The people used to believe that organisms originated spontaneously from non-living matter. So those ancient Egyptians, the ancient pharaohs, they believed that rats came from garbage, right? That sounds somehow now, but then, thousands of years ago, that's what the Egyptians believe. Okay. The Renaissance scientists knew better than this, so they know it can't be true, right? So in the 17th and the 18th centuries, it was also believed then that bacteria originated also spontaneously. Okay, but in a guy Louis Pasteur in 1862, was able to prove that thought is not correct. That hypothesis is not correct. So in 1862, Louis Pasteur disproved once and for all the theory of spontaneous generation. All right, living things could not have spontaneously originated from non-living matter. So you should be able to note in the exam, your CMA, you can be asked about the philosophy, the hypothesis put forward by the ancient Egyptians, all right, which is basically the spontaneous, okay, that living organisms originated spontaneously from non-living matters. Okay, so the idea of evolution was not originated by Darwin in the 19th century, as some people say, like you said. Okay, some ancient philosophers observed that organisms range from very simple to relatively complex ones. Okay, look at cat, for example. Look at how similar a cat is, all right, to perhaps a tiger, right? Just look at them, okay, even to a lion. So you can see some level of similarity. You begin to ask questions, okay? Each group of organisms, according to them, was created by God. So that's what we call the Judeo-Christian culture. So the Judeo-Christian culture believed that every living things were created by, you know, a very intelligent supernatural being called God. All right. So that is Judeo-Christian culture. That's their own hypothesis about how the earth came to be. So you should take note also of that. Okay. So that is what we call the doctrine of fixed species or creationism. So God made every animal, God made every plant, and from the day they were made, they never changed from that day till now. Okay, so that's John Ray. He is an Englishman, clergyman, scientist called John Ray. He was the one that came up with that belief, right? Doctrine of fixed species or creationism. They were created, the way they were created 6,000 years ago, that is the same way they've been till today. So that is fixed species or creationism. All right. So you have other guys also that's, you know, started asking questions. So most of these guys are actually theologians. Okay. So the natural theologians believe that the variations and adaptations of organisms prove that each species was fashioned by God for a particular purpose. And they believed that you can't tell me that the earth is thousands of years ago. I mean, millions or billions of years ago. All right, so they will tell you that looking at the biblical time frame, the earth is just about 6,000 years old. To look at the histories that you have in the Bible. Okay, gradually some discoveries led to the revival of discussions on evolution. Take note of this. It's examinable. The issues that led to revival of discussions on evolution. Number one, the discovery of many more kinds of organisms by the first part of the 18th century. So even to today, we are still discovering animals, all right, especially in deep forests, in the ocean, that nobody knew before. They're just giving them new names. So by that first part of the 18th century, new species of organisms were being discovered. So people started asking questions. Where are these organisms, where are they coming from? Number two, all right, paleontology, study of fossils, all right, was begun in the 18th century by a guy called Georges Cuvier. All right, so Georges Cuvier, all right, also started paleontology, studying fossils. They started discovering fossils. And from the look of those fossils, they were older than 6,000 years. So people started asking questions. Where did these animals, where did they come from? Some of them have even, you know, become extinct. So people started asking more questions. So I put up, you know, this is a picture of Georges Cuvier. You can see his picture. You can see Charles Darwin. This is the man called Charles Darwin. So this is the guy that revolutionized the theory of evolution, Charles Darwin. Okay, so fossils, of course, are remains or body impressions of dead organisms that live in the past. So they see them under rocks, on rocks, okay, in caves, and most of the time they are found within sedimentary rocks, which occur in layers. So you may have a sedimentary rock that have like 4 or 5 layers, and of course, you know that the lower layers, okay, would be older than the upper layers. So the animals, the fossils you will find them, so they are going to be older than the ones at the top. So you begin to give them ideas about various animals that have lived on this planet Earth in the past. And questions are now being asked. Okay, so they are usually found with these sedimentary rocks which occur in layers. Cuvier, from his studies, found that different layers of the rocks held different kinds of fossils. Also, the fossils appear in chronological order. That is, the deeper the layer, the older the fossil contains. So I just mentioned that. To him, these observations seem to be boundaries for dramatic change in the ancient environment. His attempt to explain these changes came to be known as catastrophism. Catastrophism. So that came from Cuvier, Georges Cuvier. So he was able to start studying fossils and start asking questions, seeing fossils in different layers of sedimentary rocks. All right. So look at the exercise 3.2. Let's test what we've learned so far. The belief that rats originated from garbage is an example of dash theory. You should know that by now, the ancient Egyptians and dash people had such belief. Oh, I just answered that. Wow. Okay, so you should know what the answer to that should be. Number 2, the view that each kind of animal and plant has remained unchanged from the day it was created is known as dash or dash. You should know that also, the Christian theologians. Then 3, examples of proponents of such a view are dash and dash. I just answered that also. Wow. Okay, I'm giving you too much answers. So look at this exercise and I'm sure you should be able to answer them. So events that led to the revival of discussions on evolution. Okay, there was a French biologist called Georges Louis Comte de Buffon. That's a long name, right? Okay, studied many mammals and observed that all of them have common features. All of them have common features. He then suggested that this could be explained in terms of their evolution from common ancestors. Like I gave the example of cats the other time. So you see cats, you see tiger, you see leopard, you see lion. You start asking questions. Look at the similarities, all right? Look at dog and look at wolf, for example, dog and wolf. So you see that dog is domesticated and the wolf is in the bush. But compare their features, you can see so much similarities. All right, so this guy started asking questions. Georges Louis Comte de Buffon. All right, then in 1795, a geologist called James Hutton argued that the Earth was older than a few thousand years, which people have been saying before, that the Earth is about 6,000 years. So James Hutton said no. You know, I've looked at sedimentary rocks. I've looked at fossils that were formed in these sedimentary rocks in lakes, in rivers, and in ocean. These fossils are older than 6,000 years. So if the fossils are older than 6,000 years, then that means the Earth itself is older than 6,000 years. And that theory of James Hutton became what is known as gradualism. Gradualism. So he indicated that the Earth was millions of years old rather than thousands of years old. That is what is called gradualism. Okay, so catastrophists like Cuvier and gradualists like Hutton and Lyell were good geologists. So these guys, they study the Earth, they study rocks. So they were convinced of an ancient Earth, but they found it difficult to explain the appearance and disappearance of a species in the fossil record. But all of them believed God created the world. All right, they were all creationists. Cuvier, the catastrophists, and the gradualists. Now, in 1809, the year Charles Darwin was born, there was a guy called John Baptiste Lamarck, all right, who proposed that all species, including human beings, were descended from other species. Okay, he believed that life changed progressively from the simple to the more complex. He was the first naturalist to present a unified theory that attempted to explain the changes in organisms from one generation to the next. So this is what is called the theory of inheritance of acquired characteristics. The theory of inheritance of acquired characteristics. All right. So the theory states that changes acquired during an individual's life are brought about by environmental pressure and internal desires, and the offspring inherits the desired changes. For example, he talked about a giraffe, for example, that the neck of giraffe is very long today because the older giraffe in the past generations, they wanted to be eating leaves, okay, on top of on very tall trees. So that desire they passed to their offspring, and so the subsequent generations of giraffe began to have a long leg, a longer neck, to be able to meet up with the aspirations of their previous fathers and mothers, to be able to have access to leaves on top of tall trees. These are not very wonderful. So that is what is called the theory of inheritance of acquired characteristics. So you can see John Baptiste de Lamarck. Then you can see the James Hudson also here. These are their pictures. Okay. So you know these guys are real, actually. So look at the exercise. The observation that distinct layers of rocks reveal sequences of dash showing gradual changes in structure support the hypothesis that species evolve. So can you fill in that gap? Then question 2, what ideas were propounded by the following? Judeo-Christians, Cuvier, Lamarck, Buffon, Hudson. Okay, so I expect you to be able to take your pen, be able to write what the Judeo-Christians, what do they believe, all right, about evolution. All right, Cuvier, what did he propose? Lamarck, what did he propose? Buffon, what did he propose? Hudson, what did he propose? All right, so that is your exercise to confirm you are good to go. All right, if you can't answer that, please pause the video and go back and listen to the video again, and you come back and come and solve this. So now, Darwin himself, Charles Robert Darwin, full name, was born 1809, died in 1882. All right, was an Englishman, naturalist. At the age of 8, his interest in observing the natural world was manifested. This guy loved nature. At 8, he was enthusiastic but aphasic collector of shells. He was collecting shells all over the area. At 10, his interest shifted to the habits of insects and birds at 10 years of age. At 15, he preferred hunting, fishing, observing the natural world to doing his schoolwork. Then when he got to university, he could not complete. He started as a medical student, but he lost interest. So he later graduated as a clergyman, all right, from Cambridge University, all right, but the interest was still in natural history. At the age of 22, one of his professors at Cambridge University, all right, John Henslow, arranged for him to take part in a training expedition led by an eminent geologist. Henslow had earlier noticed and respected Darwin's real interest in natural history. He therefore arranged that he be offered the position of naturalist in the ship they were about to sail in. The aim was to gather more knowledge of nature to add to the store of human knowledge. So somebody sponsored a shipping expedition to go all over the world to study nature. And so this Professor John Henslow, having liked the interest of Darwin in natural phenomena, invited him to be part of the team. So the ship, the body was called HMS Beagle. Please take note of that name, HMS Beagle. The main aim of the voyage was to complete an earlier work of mapping the coastline of South America. He returned to England in 1836 after nearly 5 years at sea, and he began a long life of study and contemplation. So you know dates. The guy was born in 1809, all right? He returned to England in 1836. You should be able to calculate his age, all right, when he came back to England from that shipping expedition. So this expedition actually helped John Darwin, a lot. Okay, Charles Darwin a lot. He was able to gather so much knowledge on so many fossils and the other species outside his immediate world. So look at this exercise. Charles Darwin was born in what year and died in what year? Okay, that should be simple for you. At what age was he a collector of shells? That is, I've just explained that. You can check again. He graduated from what university? That is straightforward. Check it again. All right. As what? What did he study? What did he graduate as? The profession. You should be able to tell us. Who arranged for him to be a naturalist aboard HMS Beagle? You know that's a professor. Give us the name of the professor. Then number 5, at what age did he leave for the voyage? You should be able to calculate that. You know the age he was born. Then at what age that did he return to England? You should be able, if you are following the video, you should be able to answer all these questions. Okay. Then when Darwin came back from that trip, he started asking questions. You know, we talk about hypothesis, all right? So what could explain the remarkable diversity among organisms? All right, so that question started bothering him. Then he got two clues from the field observations he made. Number 1, while in the coast of Argentina, all right, while they were mapping the coast of Argentina, he repeatedly got off the ship for exploratory trips inland. On these trips, he made detailed field observations and collected fossils. He saw for the first time many unusual species, including an armadillo. All right. Among the fossils were remains of the now extinct glyptodonts. Glyptodonts were very large animals that closely resembled the living armadillo. So what they are saying at that time, armadillos were inexistent, but glyptodonts were already extinct. So Darwin became puzzled. So you have glyptodonts that are already extinct. You have armadillos that are currently in existence, but they look so similar. So why? So if both kind of animals are being created at the same time, if they live in the same part of the world, and if they were so much alike, then why were the armadillos still moving about while the glyptodonts were long gone and buried? Although nobody, including the one, had ever seen one species evolve into another, he later wondered whether armadillos were descendants of glyptodonts. I've taken time to give you the picture. So you can see, all right, to the right, you can see the glyptodonts, the picture. To the left, you can see the armadillos. So at that time, armadillos, all right, were still existing. But glyptodonts were already extinct. But look at them, you can see for yourself the similarity. So this was now making Darwin to start asking. It's like the armadillos are actually descendants of glyptodonts that have already extinct. So it's like one generation of animals of a species is giving rise to another generation of, you know, the same species, but somehow change in some manner. There will be some variation. The second clue he had observed that populations of similar kind of organisms that live in different geographic regions often show remarkable difference in some of their traits. Similar kind of animal, all right? You see the animal in America, the feature is different. The same animal, you see it in maybe in Australia. Then you see that there is a little change. The same animal. That's what Darwin saw. So for instance, Darwin saw giant land tortoises on the Galapagos Islands, which were off the coast of Ecuador. To his surprise, all the tortoises were not identical. They even said that even natives of those islands and the sailors could tell which island a particular animal come from just by looking at it. So this animal must have come from so island. So which means it begins to show that somehow animals can adapt to the environment where they find themselves. So don't we reason that perhaps all these species descended from the same ancestral form and have become slightly modified after they become isolated on different islands? So Darwin again wondered how such modification could occur. How is it? How can that change be? He got a clue from a book published by Thomas Malthus in 1798. Take note of the dates. The title of that book was Essay on the Armadillo Glyptodont Principles of Population. In that book, Malthus said Any population tends to outgrow its resources, and its members must compete for what is available. So there is a struggle among species for available resources. This statement stopped Darwin, and he talked about all the populations he had observed during his voyage. He talked about how the individual members of those populations had differences in body size, form, coloring, and other traits. It then dawned on Darwin that some traits could lead to differences in the ability to secure scarce resources. So in the survivor, so that's what Darwin calls survival of the fittest. So the species were there, but they're competing among themselves for scarce resources. So for you to be able to survive, you have to adapt, you have to evolve. Okay, so that is what Darwin was able to conclude, after reading the book of Thomas Malthus. Okay, so look at this exercise. Mention two pieces of evidence that suggested to Darwin that evolution occurs. So I gave you the examples, the two clues he had, okay, through that voyage. Number two, who wrote the book essay on the principles of population? Of course, you should know the answer, the author. In what year was it published? I mentioned the year, check. State the main ideas in that essay. I also talked about it. Okay, basically there's competition, right, among species for scarce resources. Okay, how did that idea help Darwin in his study of the process of natural selection? The answer is very clear. It's either you evolve or you die. Okay, so the survivor of the fittest. So you have to evolve to survive. Okay, so Darwin got a clue of how modifications could occur from Thomas Malthus' essay on the principles of populations. With that clue, Darwin declared that it was natural selection, that is, nature selecting the fit and rejecting the unfit, that led to modifications in members of a species. So there are struggles for existence. So nature will select individuals with advantageous traits and eliminate others that cannot survive, that cannot fit. So a population could change. Favored individuals will pass on the useful traits to the next generation, and the offspring will do the same, and so on. So gradually, descendants of the favored individuals will make up most of the population, and less favored individuals might have no descendants at all. So that's what Darwin said about evolution, natural selection. So the species or the animals with the traits that are best suited, that are best suited to the environment are the ones that will survive, while the others would actually fade off. That's why you see, you now see that some species are becoming extinct. Okay, because the law of natural selection is actually weeding them out. They cannot survive. So Darwin published his work in 1859, and of course, till now, till now, it is still causing a lot of arguments and tension. Religious people say, what is this guy talking about? He's talking against, what we believe, and that's so. It's a lot of, at that time. Okay, so imagine if it is causing ripple today. Imagine the kind of ripple it would have caused then. So many people are disturbed because the theory implies that humans probably evolved from apes, monkeys, all right, since all share similar characteristics. You look at a monkey, you look at human beings. Some people can't eat monkeys because it's like you are eating a human being, all right? In 1858, Darwin received an essay from a young English naturalist called Alfred Russel Wallace. This guy too wrote an essay independently on theory of evolution by means of natural selection. Both of them discovered that theory independently. All right, and as a science student, I've seen many case studies like that, inventions happening at the same time in different parts of the world independently. Okay, but Darwin is the one that everybody recognizes, all right, because of the amount of evidence he gathered. This something started at the age of 8, like I mentioned, 8, 10, 15, 22. He was on 5 years on a voyage. So this guy has compelling evidence and track record, and that's why today, all right, unless you are in that field of maybe biology Okay, you might not have heard of Alfred Russel Wallace, but everybody has heard of Darwin, okay, because of the level of work he did. So Darwin's theory of evolution is one of the main unifying themes of the biological sciences. It provides explanation for three main set of facts about life on Earth. Okay, number one, incredible display of different types of living things we see about us. Number two, the different degrees of likeness among the living things. The likeness could be anatomical or molecular. Number three, the fossil record that shows a sequence in the kind of organisms that have lived on Earth over billions of years. Okay, Darwin's theory still faced a crucial test, which worried him. He did not explain the mechanism of heredity, that is, the way desirable traits are actually transmitted to offspring. So we need another knowledgeable person to actually handle that for us. So exercise 3 says, two keen observers of nature who outlined the theory of evolution by natural selection. Well, so just name them: Cuvier and Lamarck, Darwin and Wallace, Buffon and Darwin, Malthus and Yale. I'm sure that answer is straightforward. You should be able to get that. 2, natural selection may occur when there are A, heritable traits, B, variations in traits within a population, C, adaptive traits, D, differences in survival and reproduction among members of a population, E, all of the above. So you should be able to pick what your best answer should be. All right, now Darwin has given us the theory of natural selection. All right, the fittest will survive, and any species that is not fit is going to be forgotten, and we are studying them as fossils today. All right, that's what Darwin contributed to knowledge. But like we said before Darwin, people have been asking questions on evolution. Then after Darwin also died, people came up with new discoveries in the field of paleontology, genetics, biochemistry, embryology, geology, ecology. All right, so people were coming up with more knowledge on evolution. Okay, before Darwin died, he predicted that the fossil records would yield intermediate links between the great group of organisms. That is, the great group of organisms include fishes, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. So even without seeing such a fossil, he predicted that one day a fossil will be discovered that will be half fish, half reptile, half bird, half mammal. That's what that is saying. And later, they discovered it was true. The paleontologists, people who study fossils, later confirmed they discovered a fossil like that called ARCHAEOPTERYX. So this was half reptile, half bird. Okay, I think I have the fossil there, so you can see. So that is the fossil, ARCHAEOPTERYX. So part of it, is reptile. Part of it is bird, right? It is two-legged. It has two legs. It has teeth. It has long bony tail. Then its body was covered with feathers like a bird. So Darwin was right. Okay. Then later we have technologies. We can now use microscope to even see fossils that are not visible to the physical eye. All right. So discovery of microscopic fossils by paleontologists have extended back the known history of life on Earth to more than 3.5 billion years. So the fossils, they use what they call carbon dating. So with carbon dating, they can actually predict how many years those fossils had been existing. All right. So the discovery of other fossils has shed light on the ways in which organisms have evolved from the simple to the complex over this enormous time span. So among the most important development in evolutionary biology since Darwin is the application of genetics to the theory of evolution by natural selection. So this is where a man called Gregor Mendel, he was the one that was able to solve that genetical question that Darwin could not solve. All right, Gregor Mendel's law of inheritance were rediscovered. Scientists found out that those were accounted for the origin of new variations in organisms and how these variations were passed on from parents to their offspring. All right. So you look like your dad, you look like your mom. So this is Gregor Mendel, laws of inheritance, was able to explain this. Biochemistry also have helped us in, working on evolution after Darwin. So biochemistry is the science that examines the chemical processes and substances that occur in living things. All right. These techniques are being used to understand evolution better. Samples of the same kind of protein, all right, are obtained from different organisms. Of course, we all have protein. Then biochemical tools are used to determine the sequences, amino acids. Of course, science students know that proteins can be broken down to amino acids. So we look at the amino acids in those proteins. Individuals, populations, species, and even larger groups have sequences that are characteristic of them. So amino acids in a particular group of animals, they will be their pattern will be very similar. That's what they are saying. So when sequences are compared for, let's say, 10 different species, their degree of relationship can be specified precisely by looking at the patterns of the amino acids. So biochemistry have helped us to be able to understand, to gather more information about evolution after Darwin. Okay, then an international team of scientists from Australia, Great Britain, and US, they also find that human evolution is still operating according to the forces of natural selection, which was identified by Charles Darwin. Their studies, what did they discover? Number one, natural selection is leading women to have the first child earlier in life. Okay, this tendency is partly inherited. Then, as a result, evolution is leading to an increasing biological pressure on women to start families earlier than later. So you discover that especially maybe in Africa, for example, you see that operating, and maybe also in Asia. Okay, so let's look at our review questions. Fields of inquiry which have contributed to a better understanding of the mechanism of evolution include. So we mentioned some areas of knowledge that have contributed, so you should check. If you cannot answer that now, pause the video and check. Number two question, an intermediate link between bird reptiles. Remember I talked about one fossil that was discovered that is half bird, half reptile. Okay, what is the name? All right, and what year was it discovered? This part is in the lecture. Okay, then three, that is the science which explains how characteristics are passed on from parents to offspring. So you should be able to answer that now. If you can't, then you should pause the video and go back. So this, of course, I'm sure you have enjoyed this particular video. I have. So if you have not yet, if you are yet to subscribe to the channel, kindly subscribe to this channel to get more educative video from me. Thank you.